Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Wheel of Crime podcast. My name is Jenn.
And my name is Emily. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome back.
Oh, if you can't tell.
Imagine if I did that bit the entire episode and just, never let it go. How annoying would that be?
I'd literally log off. I'd just be like, that's it.
You
can finish this on your own. Bye. Also, though, it would be kind of impressive. I feel like any kind of silly voice or, bit or persona, it's kind of hard to keep up with it for longer than, 5 minutes.
That is true. I feel like I would forget, and then the bit would be ruined, and then I would just have to cry myself to sleep.
Basically. All right. Well, what was your last week like, Jen, now that we're back to our regularly scheduled programming, basically?
Hectic. I'm working again, unfortunately.
I know. I was trying to live vicariously through you while you were enjoying your break. That was very fun for me, briefly.
Dude, I'm so good at being unemployed. It's not even funny how good I am at that.
You know what? I would love to know what that feels like, but for me it's been a very, very long time. I feel like the last time I had the experience of not being needed for a job was the pandemic. And even then I was still employed. I was just doing something else.
Yeah. I really have come to love and enjoy my little breaks from things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like I work the same amount of hours as most people do. Actually, I work probably more hours than most people do in a year at their regular jobs. Just in very congested stints, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like for you though, that's also a little bit, it is more challenging if you have shorter time frames that are just more pressure and longer hours, because it really does take a lot of it kind of is soul sucking because it's not balanced.
I'm for sure taking years off my life. No doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. That wasn't even part of the question. That's just assumed. That goes along with it.
I'm not living to 90 years old. It's just not going to happen for me.
Ooh, fair enough. And also same. Yeah, my last week's also been crazy busy with work. I feel like because I work an office job, other office people might relate to this. January, February, March, the first quarter of the year is just fucking crazy. Crazy. And people are also crazy. The work is crazy.
Yeah.
What people want is crazy. What people are doing is crazy. And it literally, and I say the first 3 months because it actually doesn't stop until the summertime. And then you have maybe 2 months where things are blissfully quiet while people are on holidays. And then the craziness starts to sneak back in. It's I was talking with one of my friends who works in healthcare, and they were like, you'd never understand a full moon shift at the hospital, which I probably wouldn't, and I have heard stories. But then some days I feel are just full moon office days, and I'm like, oh no, it's just a day at the office. Ha 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 ha! Kill me.
Oh my gosh.
Losing my mind. I can't wait until things are just not
retirement?
Yeah, things that are not like they are right now, and then I will be much happier, but it's not like that right now.
I can't wait till I win the lottery.
Yeah, I can't wait until something super amazing happens, because I've been so good. University, hear that? I've been really good and I deserve a treat. The treat being never having to work, but also being full-bodied and able to do many other things. See, because I know there's always balance. I feel like if I had a lot of money, I would be a great person to have a lot of money. I'm just saying. I
would be fantastic at being rich.
I would be so resourceful.
I'm built to be rich.
I would not be out here buying 1,500 trucks or whatever it is that people feel like they need to do when they have money. I would just live as I am right now, but not be working. And that would be so nice.
And maybe on vacation.
Yeah, and maybe taking vacations. That would be the only difference. Because I don't do that now. Who has time for vacations? Ha 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 ha! Oh, silly. So silly. Okay, what else? What's something fun, though? What is something fun from this last week I can share on the show? I'm still in love with that bald elf. That takes up a lot of my time when I'm not working. And I feel like besides that, that has been pretty much it. It is so cold where I am right now that if you leave your house and you are not wearing toque, gloves, balaclava, snowsuit, you're like my fingers were sticking together the other day. Like, for whatever reason, it's just I had just enough moisture in my hands that my fingers were sticking together. And I was like, this is sickening. I hate it here.
Famous.
Awful. So terrible. I've been wearing 2 pairs of socks because my feet are so cold all the time, sitting at my desk, doing my desk job.
I had to turn the heat on in my apartment, okay? And Emily knows how fucking insanely hot my apartment is. And I turned the heat on. That's how cold it is.
That's crazy. That's crazy already. Her place is above where people run their vehicles. So it's just like assumed it's going to be hot in there all the time. If you're turning your heat on, that's basically the apocalypse.
It's too damn cold if I have to turn the heat on.
Too damn cold. Yeah. And that's been my life. Anything fun from your last week you want to share on the show before we get into it?
No.
Okay. Well, let's get into our wheel of questions, because that's fun, and then we don't have to talk about our stressful jobs on the podcast where the listeners are like, why do we have to hear about how much you guys don't like your jobs every time you record? And it's because...
Shut the fuck up, bitches.
Sorry, guys. It's just that's literally what we do is our day jobs. And then we get on the podcast, and what else is there to think about? You know what I'm saying? But I digress. Let's spin the wheel.
Spin away, Em.
What is your favorite internet hoax?
There's a lot of good ones.
Right? See, I always have a hard time remembering the hoaxes because I usually mix them up with the jokes, like the bits that sometimes happen online. Because some people will see like things that are meant to be funny online and think that they're real, which then kind of makes them a hoax. But then there's the actual hoaxes.
Do
you just search up top 5
I'm looking
internet
at a
hoaxes?
BuzzFeed article.
Yeah, let's see what the BuzzFeed article says. It might be easier for us to rate which one we like the best out of a list of hoaxes. Because the internet's been around long enough. There's definitely a few.
You know what? I clicked on this article, but then the article doesn't exist. But you know what does exist? A BuzzFeed quiz that says, tell us which internet hoaxes you remember and we'll guess your age. So we're just going to do that instead.
Sure, let's do it. Let's take a BuzzFeed quiz on the podcast. As if that doesn't already age us a little bit.
Fuck my life. Lonely Girl 15, a secretly scripted YouTube vlog featuring a teen girl who seemed to be part of a dark cult. I don't remember that one.
I have no idea what that is.
But I am intrigued. I'm going to look it up after this episode.
Sure, why not?
Nigerian prince scam. An email seemingly sent from a Nigerian prince requesting money or your bank account number. Which I think everyone remembers that.
Well, yeah, because that's not a hoax. That's just a scam.
Like, literally. Charging an iPod with an onion after pouring Gatorade over an onion. The device could be unplugged. It could be plugged into the onion and begin charging?
I've seen that before. I feel like that is almost more like an
urban legend?
No. Like, you know those videos you see where it's like all life hack and it's very clearly something that's like way more complicated? That's what it feels like.
No. Dude, I'm bleeping out life hack. Can't speak these forbidden words.
Oh my god, okay.
Okay, Hercules the dog. A photoshopped image of a fully grown horse standing next to a dog of the same size. I don't remember this.
That sounds... You know what? Everything really is just a circle. Because I feel like we've gone back to that with AI stuff where people see things and they're like, oh my god, look at all these cats doing yoga. There's like 50 of them. They're so in sync. And you're like, yeah.
That's not real, Deborah.
Or my favorite is, not to, just to add on to that quickly before we move on. I fully had a relative share, like a repost or whatever it's called, sharing on Facebook. And it was like, look, they found, wow, I can't believe they found mermaids in the Antarctic. And it's like a bunch of AI people underwater with like flashlights. And they're like pointing at something
things
that is so obviously a fake mermaid that's like twisting in the water. And I was like,
okay, first of all, there's so many things to unpack with what you just said. It's called sharing on Facebook. Like, what do you mean? I think most people listening to this podcast
on
know
Facebook.
that. Second of all, oh my god, that's hilarious. I need to know which family member immediately after this podcast episode so I can make fun of them forever.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay. Moving on.
Yeah.
The Derbyshire Ferry, a ferry corpse created by a former prop maker who posted it on eBay. I definitely heard of that one.
I did hear about that one, yep.
Apollo 20, a YouTube account that posted a series of videos proving the existence of extraterrestrial life on the moon. I don't know if I remember that one.
I don't remember that one.
The Montauk Monster, an unknown creature that supposedly washed up on beach in Long Island.
I feel like I know that one because it got compared a lot to, you know, the Ripley's Believe It or Not mermaid that they had, where it's like, look, this thing washed up somewhere, and it's very clearly like half a dead monkey and half a fish that somebody just like stuck
Glued together.
Yeah.
Google TV, a fake explaining how to get onto the tech giant's secret TV platform.
Not a clue.
I do not remember that. Organ thieves, an email that went viral claiming thieves were stealing kidneys from Mardi Gras patrons at New Orleans. I don't think I heard that specific one, but I definitely feel like fear-mongering was so strong around people stealing your organs that I was terrified about that as a child.
Oh, absolutely. I was like, if I have to go in to the dentist, they're going to steal my
They're
kidneys.
gonna steal my kidney.
Yeah, like I was like, I don't trust these people. I don't know what's going to happen.
The body of Bigfoot, an elaborate costume that tricked people into believing Bigfoot had been found.
Okay, but that's like every 3 years. That's not even on the internet. That's just people being like, I found Bigfoot. And then it's like the same
No, it's just
blurry
in
photo
general,
again. Yeah.
The Blair Witch Project, a film that the original moviegoers believed was a documentary of found footage from children who were lost in the woods. That
Honestly,
one's so funny to me.
I was like, I know for a fact we know what that one is because we've talked about it before on the podcast. Yeah.
Two thing. A fake story picked up by dozens of news outlets that stated Bluetooth devices were used to organize random hookups.
What does that even
sounds like
mean?
A right-wing media thing.
Like, Bluetooth is the new Tinder? Is that, like, the insinuation?
I guess so.
That is so weird. Know. Turn on your Bluetooth and you're going to find yourself a wife. That is so crazy. That is so crazy.
A hotelicopter, a prank video that led people to believe the first luxury hotel helicopter had been created. Never heard of that.
I did actually hear about that one.
You did? Helicopter shark, a photoshopped image that featured a shark leaping out of the water to attack a person hanging from a military helicopter. I feel like I heard of that one.
I don't think I heard about that one.
Our First Time, a fake website that was created to broadcast the first time for two 18-year-olds who were actually actors.
That's just porn.
Yeah. Manbeef.com, a fake website that offered recipes and tips for cooking with human meat. Nope.
I heard about that one. That was on the Chive at one point.
BuyTigers.com, a fake website that claimed to sell and ship live tigers to buyers around the world. That's just Joe Exotic.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's real, and that's also... that is literally Tiger King's website.
Yeah.
What do you mean a hoax?
Bonsai Kitten, a website that claimed to teach people how to grow a kitten in a jar Much like the way bonsai plant is molded to fit into its planter.
Weird. And also hinges slightly on animal cruelty? That's a weird one.
The broom challenge. People claim NASA had said February 10th was the only day a broom could stand up on its own due to Earth's gravitational pull. People are so...
I know that one.
Naive.
I know that one because there were people literally our age taking videos of this and posting it when this day came. I remember this.
I have no recollection of that.
What?
Instagram repost. An image that A-list celebs reposted on Instagram, falsely believing it would protect users' content. I feel like that goes around on Facebook every 2 minutes.
I think I totally misunderstood what you just said.
You know on Facebook when people were like, make those posts that are like, I do not consent to my information being shared, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. That's like every 3 years whenever they update privacy settings or whatever it is, and then they're like, quick, you have to post a disclaimer. I feel like the first time that went around, I was like, sure. But then it's like every 3 years or 2 years or whatever, I'm like,
Oh,
that's probably not a thing. I get you want to be safe, but I have my doubts.
Okay. Highway shark. A photoshopped image of a shark swimming down a highway that resurfaces after every hurricane.
We don't get hurricanes where we're from, so I've never seen that, but I do fully believe that exists. Not a shark swimming down a highway, but an internet hoax of a shark swimming down a highway.
So, based on my results, I checked more than 86% of quiz takers, but I'm 24 years old according to this quiz. It says, you know a few of these hoaxes, but still remember the good old days of email chains and instant messaging, which is true, but I'm also not 24.
But you gotta think, BuzzFeed kind of had its moment quite a few years ago, so this probably does equal to your actual age right now. Sorry.
Actually, it does. This was posted on March 29th, 2020. I would have been 24.
Wait, I was right. That checks out.
Well, that's depressing. Okay, anyways, moving on.
Yeah, anyways, moving on. So then, of that list, we'll just go off the list. What is your favorite from that list?
I personally love when people post on like Facebook and Instagram, I do not consent, because I find it hilarious. Every time I read one of those posts, I'm like, Deborah, Mark Zuckerberg is not reading this post. He is not. No, my favorite's
when they call them out by name, where they're like, I do not give Marcus J. Zuckerberg, whatever his name is, permission.
Do not steal my photos.
To permission to sell my content.
I'm like, you signed the terms and conditions when you signed up for this website. Like, it's too late, girly pop. Like, you're done.
Well, and I'm looking at these people, I'm like, you are not a comedian. Like, nobody cares about what you're posting.
And it's so funny to me. Like, I don't log on to Facebook often, but the once a year that I do, I see like 10 of those posts, and I have a good laugh.
That's fair.
You know? A good chuckle. What about you?
I feel like the one with the broom still comes around, and I do really enjoy when people post videos of that, because there's a decent amount of people who are convinced that it works.
I've never heard of that.
And part of me is like, because I've seen videos of people being able to make their broom stand, but I'm like, is that not just like maybe the bristles were manufactured extra well on that broom? Like, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I will say I do remember the fairy corpse one, and I remember seeing that picture on the internet and being like, probably not. But then, like, here's the thing, and I don't know if this makes me a bad person or not, but when there is something that lures in a certain brand of delusional people, I do get a good chuckle out of it.
Yeah, same.
Am I also a certain brand of delusional people? Yes, which is why I feel like I'm allowed to say that. However, I can have my moments
not quite
too.
That delusional.
Exactly.
Delusional with a hint of skepticism.
It's healthy. It keeps a person's spirit healthy. All right. Let's move on to our next question.
All right.
What do you remember about the Ukraine war of 2022?
I remember it was devastating for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And someone from the Ukraine stole my husband's credit card information to try and buy a flight, which is sad.
That's sad. And also, I did not know that. Somebody stole his information in the Ukraine?
Yeah, during his bachelor trip, his card got compromised by someone in the Ukraine trying to book a flight out of the Ukraine.
That is very unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate. So that's totally, what comes to mind. That
totally threw me off my groove. I did not realize. I remember him saying that his card got frauded during his bachelor trip, which to me, anyways, I was like, the timing, crazy. That's like the one weekend where you're supposed to be out like spending money and forgetting where what you spent it on.
Yeah.
Weird. Oh. Well, I hope they made it out. I don't know if it was with his credit card or somebody else's, but I guess it was from 3 years ago now.
Yeah, it wasn't with his credit card because it immediately got flagged by the bank, so...
That's fair, yeah. I know, I'm trying to think back to what time was like back then. I feel like it was very... Like, it's weird to think of that it was 3 years ago now because it was kind of, quote-unquote, fresh after the pandemic. And I feel like it really, at least for me anyways, made me feel a little bit depressed because I was like, oh my god, like we just got out of this place where half places are still locked down, the other half aren't, and now like there's war in the Ukraine. Like it's just it really felt like one of those things where you like shoot yourself in the foot by being like, how can things get any worse? And then they just do, and then you're like, fuck. Like that's what it felt like.
I feel like the war is still going on, is it not?
I'm pretty sure. I just know 2022 is when it started. I feel like I haven't seen anything about, like, it ending, technically, so I don't think so.
Yeah, it's literally still happening.
Well, there we go, folks. For anybody who didn't know, the Ukraine war is still happening here now in January, February of 2025.
It's definitely February, but...
Oops! It's also February when we're recording. I just don't know where I am. Yeah, I know. There was something else I was going to add to that, too, but I don't really remember now. I feel like I just remember seeing, like, a lot of things on the internet where half people were trying to, like, be, like bring up spirits a little bit and trying to, like, be a little bit lighthearted about stuff. Like, I remember seeing some guy had decked out the interior of his tank or something in the Ukraine or something. Yeah. But then, of course, there's always the flip side, right? But I don't know. I'd have to dig deep to remember more stuff about that. But, yeah, that's basically it on my end.
All right, well, let's spin for our next question.
Amazing. What do you think of the creation of hoaxes? So, my question is more like, do you feel like hoaxes serve like a purpose in some kind of way, or do you feel like you understand why hoaxes are created?
I mean, they're really just misinformation, right? So it's people making shit up for fun, seemingly, to try and trick people.
What I find interesting specific about internet hoaxes is that there's kind of a division on how people view them. There's a good half of people who think if you fall for an internet hoax, that's kind of your fault for being dumb enough to believe something, and that it's just a prank. But then there's another part of me that's like, but also I feel like a lot of hoaxes are usually made to take advantage of people in some kind of way. Like, to me, it feels like a little malicious in nature sometimes. Like, of course, there's always going to be lighthearted ones, but that kind of steers more into, like, joke territory, less hoax territory.
For me, I'm kind of always on the camp of people are really bad at reading and doing research.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I was in journalism, they literally taught us, like, people, most of the time, are just going to read the headline. And they're going to take that at face value. And that is so true. Like,
mm-hmm.
I've talked to so many people where they've clearly just read a headline of a news article and not done any further research. So I understand why hoaxes happen, because people are not willing to educate themselves and are willing to take things at face value. And I think, like, TikTok, any social media really kind of exaggerates that phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in a sense, starting an internet hoax, while it can be funny, is, like, also can do a lot more harm than good.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I was saying, too, that it does feel malicious in nature. Because I feel like there's one thing where it's like a hoax that develops naturally based off of misunderstandings versus someone intentionally creating hoaxes with the intention of taking advantage of people, whether it be in a quote-unquote innocent way or with some sort of scam in mind.
Mm-hmm. It's like the stupid AI cats, all 50 of them doing yoga in a row. Like, it's insane that people believe it's real.
Mm-hmm.
But there are literally people out there who believe it's real.
Yeah, and like I try to be understanding because when I see ridiculous stuff, like, of course, I think it's ridiculous, but if somebody's seeing it and choosing to believe it, I at least want to emphasize with why they might feel that way. And sometimes with this AI stuff, I'm like, I get it. Like, if you're somebody who's older and maybe has vision problems, like, maybe you can't really see that well and you're just seeing videos of stuff, or, like, you just see the big, bold letters on something, I can totally see why you might believe something, especially if you can't catch, like, the nuanced details of things. But then, too, that kind of gets into the whole thing of, like, well, this is also in part why older people get taken advantage of a lot as far as, like, scams go and this kind of thing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess, for a lot of stuff.
Like, everyone makes fun of the Nigerian prince scams now, but people legitimately lost their life savings because of that. And
still do. Like, I fully saw a video recently of a girl asking, she was on, I think TikTok or something, or Instagram, but she was asking for people to donate to their GoFundMe because her grandma spent all of her retirement savings trying to save a lord or something in another country. And it's like, that is still a thing that's going on. That is still something that people think is real.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But let's spin for our last question so I can get into the story with you. Would you ever be a pilot? And if so, why? Now, to preface, I know this is a question we've discussed on the podcast before, but not technically in this format, where Jen did say, and I quote, "Yes, I would like to be a pilot, and I am looking to get my pilot's license." I understand you people who listen to the show who would write it and tell me that I ask repetitive questions. I technically did not ask that question yet. That came up as a response to a different question. So, Jen, what's your answer?
I would love to be a for fun pilot and get my pilot's license for fun, to fly myself for fun. I would never want to be a commercial pilot.
Yes. Same and same. Although, I will say, I actually don't think I would pick pilot as my preference. I've actually never really felt the need to get a pilot's license or even a boating license. Those are two things that I am perfectly happy putting in someone else's capable and learned hands, which will be Jen.
I would love to get my pilot's license. I think it would be so fun.
I would fly with you if you got your pilot's license. I just would not want to have one myself.
Hell yeah. Okay, well, when I eventually do it someday,
okay,
you can fly with me.
Sounds good. It's probably for the best, because I got weird eye problems anyway, so I should not be trusted behind the wheel of a plane.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so that'd be your job.
Perfect.
All right. Do you have a guess on what today's episode is going to be?
Some sort of internet hoax around a pilot fighting in the Ukrainian war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. See, that's the thing. I really want to, like, talk about... I wanted to do interesting questions, but with this specific one, it was kind of hard to, like...
Make them vague enough?
Yeah, and I also don't want to be like the people we just talked about where I, like, lead you on with a story where it's like, oh, this is totally real, just in case there are people who skim the show. So, yeah, full disclosure, I am going to be talking about a hoax that has to do with the Ukraine war. But let's get into the description first, and then we'll see if you've actually heard about it, because I actually remember reading about this at the start of when this all happened.
All right, well, take her away, Em.
The Ghost of Kyiv, pronounced...
I can tell you right now, I never heard of this. I'm not on...
Just wait.
Ghost TikTok.
Which is Privid Kyiva, from what I can tell, is the nickname given to an MiG-29 Fulcrum flying ace, which was credited to shooting down 6 Russian planes over Kyiv during the Kyiv offensive on the 24th of February in 2022. Various reports, including the Security Service of the Ukraine, had made similar claims, and the Ghost of Kyiv has been credited as a morale booster for Ukrainians during the Russo-Ukrainian War. So now do you think you've heard about it?
No, absolutely not.
Wonderful. Well, let's get into my story for you here.
Take her away.
The Ghost of Kyiv was a Ukrainian fighter pilot, a lone warrior in the aerial defense of Ukraine's embattled capital city in the early weeks of the Russian invasion. Deftly maneuvering his 30-year-old twin-engine MiG-29, the Ghost jealously guarded the sky over Kyiv. Fighting against the odds with antiquated weaponry, he shot down 40 Russian warplanes before finally succumbing to enemy fire 3 weeks into the war. The Ghost of Kyiv, real name Stepan Tarabalka, died in the cockpit of his trusty MiG on March 14th, as reported by The Times. Just one problem. The Ghost of Kyiv legend isn't true, and even the Ukrainian Air Force, which once sort of embraced the tale, admitted so after The Times' baseless story on the ghost's demise went viral. The information about the death of the Ghost of Kyiv is incorrect, the Air Force tweeted. The Ghost of Kyiv is alive. It embodies the collective spirit of the highly qualified pilots of the Tactical Aviation Brigade who are successfully defending Kyiv and all the region. The Ghost of Kyiv is a superhero legend whose character was created by the Ukrainians, which is another quote that was added by the Air Force on Facebook. The ghost, in other words, is an idea. Not an MiG pilot named Tarabalka, who single-handedly shot down twice as many planes as outside analysts can confirm Moscow had lost in more than 2 months of bitter fighting at the time. And warplane kills aren't hard to prove over Ukraine. Daytime shoot-downs often are visible from the ground, and just as often recorded and made public. Ukraine, after all, is teeming with literally tens of millions of smartphone cameras with easy access to social media. And it's not for no reason that open-source intelligence analysts often find overlapping visual evidence, videos and photos to confirm the outcome of any observed aerial engagement. It might take a few weeks, but evidence usually surfaces, which I included this because this is from 2022, right? That this internet hoax is circling, and it was around the start of the war. So it's very interesting that there was something sufficient enough that, like, a lot of people believed that this was something that was going on. Like, that this pilot was real.
I wonder if it was kind of to build hope and morale.
Yeah, and there'll be a couple places where I talk about that a little bit, but this is why it's interesting, like, going back to what we were saying earlier about hoaxes in general. It's like, but even a hoax created to bring morale up, it still has a weird feeling to it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that the, like, actual, like, Air Force had to address this. And they're like, is not real.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was, like, after the Times, there was a couple other, like, bigger news article places that actually public articles had talked about it. So, Yeah, that's the only reason why they said anything, but I digress. Periodic assessments by foreign powers usually affirm the OSINT practitioners' rough counts. ORINCs through April tallied up the destruction of 16 Ukrainian fighters and attack planes, losses that, combined with non-catastrophic damage, wear and tear, could reduce Kyiv's 125 jet frontline fleet to around half as many flyable airframes. An unnamed Pentagon official nodded to this likely rate of attrition when on April 19th they told reporters that a recent influx of spare parts, aided by U.S. officials, allowed the Ukrainian Air Force to repair around 20 grounded fighters, actually making Kyiv's combat-ready jet fleet bigger than it had been the 2 weeks before. If unofficial tracking of Ukraine's aerial losses is accurate, there's no reason why unofficial tracking of Russia's aerial losses wouldn't also be accurate. So, how this relates to the Ghost of Kyiv is a lot of people were kind of combing through the records of downed planes to try and cross-reference the Ghost of Kyiv's movements and activity and where it had been shot down and these types of things. And then when the Ukraine Air Force came out with their own, like, evaluations and their own records and like the backing to their records on everything, people then were like, oh, well, clearly then it's a Russian thing and the Russians aren't keeping track of things or tracking things differently. And it's not that they're not. It's just that they're on the other side of a war. You're not going to find those records of where Russians are discussing their numbers of downed planes when they're actively in a conflict.
Yeah.
It's already surprising
people
to me.
Don't really think about those things, though.
Yeah, and it was already surprising to me anyways, which I'm assuming at the time, like, I didn't look at the published date of the article versus the information that they're referencing, but I'm shocked anyways that the Ukraine was even sharing how many downed fighters they had at the time, unless it was already outdated information anyways.
Yeah, seems counterintuitive.
Right? But also, what do I know? Either way, it's apparent that the Russian Air Force, at least at the time, so to be clear, all of my notes that I'm making are specific to the Ghost of Kyiv hoax. The actual records and actual numbers of this war have since then changed. This is within the time period that the Ghost of Kyiv was quote-unquote active. All right? So that's how all of this is tying in together. So
before he passed through the astroplane.
Yeah, exactly. So, if unofficial tracking of the Ukraine's aerial losses is accurate, there's no reason why unofficial tracking of Russia's aerial losses wouldn't also be accurate, which I already said. It's apparent that the Russian Air Force has lost at least 24 fighters, or had at the time, and attack planes over the Ukraine, which is a minimal count, but is probably within 100% of the total actual count. So that's just basically a guaranteed number that they have. So technically, statistically speaking, it's 100% accurate off of the information that they already have and are aware about. It's just not 100% accurate if you're also taking into account Russia's records. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So then, which is to say, there is no way one Ukrainian pilot shot down 40 Russian planes, not when there was probably hundreds of Kyiv's pilots who had flown combat missions since Russia had attacked on February the 23rd of 2022, and several undoubtedly have scored kills, which again, there is no testifiable number to that. The only point of saying that is to sit there and say that there is one guy who is up there in a vintage airplane for 3 weeks who had taken down 40 Russians. That is just very simply hella not true.
Not quite possible yet. And all of that is to say, the Ghost of Kyiv myth never passed the test, so to speak. So whatever mark you want to give hoaxes to the point of believability, it doesn't even technically pass the point of believability when you actually, like you said earlier, read the body of the story.
And unfortunately, the Ghost of Kyiv hoax got a little bit worse because otherwise credible Ukrainian sources, so news outlets, started to begin pointing to old official photos of pilots in cockpits, as well as footage from video games, and claimed that they were all hard evidence of the ghost's existence. Which is another weird thing I did not realize would be a thing. I found a video about this, by the way.
That's funny to say. It's like, this is hard evidence, guys.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. So, because I read that, and I was like, what do you mean old video game evidence, or old video game footage and claiming it's evidence? Literally what it was is that there's, like, flight simulator type games that came out between, like, the 90s and the 2000s. All somebody had done was they'd made a video montage of the Ghost of Kyiv using photos of old fighter planes, old fighter pilots, and then also included this footage from a video game. People watched that video and thought that the video game footage was actual footage of the plane in activity, because it was a part of these montages that were being claimed by news sources in the Ukraine as hard evidence.
Was Mark Zuckerberg behind it?
Surprisingly, no, I don't think. Maybe partially. We can give him 20% of the responsibility, I think.
If he would just stop stealing our photos, I think none of this would have ever happened.
True enough. And, let's see. Yeah, so the video game footage, which, because we post, our social media is primarily photos and stuff, I probably won't be able to share the video footage, but I'll try and get some screen grabs of what that game looks like, because if you look at it and you're like, this is a video game, you see that it's a video game. But if you didn't know that before, like, I watched the video first before I'd seen some of the additional information, and it literally didn't even cross my mind that it was a video game.
I mean, video games now look hyper realistic.
Well, especially if they're taking something that's, like, meant to be a retro looking flight or flight simulator, and then including it along with a bunch of, like, other vintage type photos or whatever. I can kind of see where people would lead into that.
Yeah, I can too.
So, even in the war over Ukraine, air-to-air battles are fairly rare. These days, ground-based air defense is prone to the greatest danger pose the greatest danger to aircraft, on either side of conflict. And that's just one reason it's been 80 years since a single pilot has racked up more than a handful of air-to-air kills across an entire flying career. Yes, Russia is losing a lot of planes, or was at the time. This, again, is taken around the time that the Ghost of Kyiv was active, which was within the first 3 months of the war, so we're thinking back to 2022. But not 40 in 3 weeks, solely in aerial combat, and certainly not to one pilot shooting down enemy flyers at a rate of 2 a day. The numbers just don't line up. Kyiv's aviators have demonstrated incredible bravery, strapping into their cockpits day after grueling day to battle a much better armed foe. You don't have to create ghost pilots to celebrate the Ukraine's actual pilots. Yes, the Ghost of Kyiv is dead because he never existed in the first place. And despite the Ghost of Kyiv being an urban legend or instance of war propaganda, technically, the pilot's alleged existence has been credited as a major morale boost for the Ukrainian population by bolstering optimism during the early days of the Russian invasion. The story was widely shared by people all over the world, but also by Ukrainians, mostly on social media, and eventually came to be treated by some as a composite character, metaphorically representing the actions of the entire Air Force. So, while it came out that he was fictitious, people were still sharing his stories, but just moving the intent to be more of, like, an inspirational character of a sorts.
Right.
So then,
I can see that.
Right? Which I kind of like that. I like that they took and made it into something that actually had meaning versus, like, a hoax. They're like, no, like, this is going to be a representative character of, like, the actions of the pilots and the bravery of the pilots.
The pilots.
Yeah. So
the
then,
pilots.
The capital T pilots. And So we're going to talk a little bit about the simulator too, because I couldn't not. The computer-generated footage of the Ghost of Kyiv winning a dogfight was made using the 2013 video game Digital Combat Simulator and was uploaded by a YouTube user. I believe since then the video is no longer... Like, when I saw it, it was attached to, like, a web page. I didn't see it through YouTube, so I'm not totally sure that it is on YouTube anymore. But the uploader at the time stated in the description that the footage was not real and was merely a tribute, urging the Ghost of Kyiv, real or fake, to keep fighting. The video was then, subsequently, shared by the official Twitter account of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, which then went viral on social media.
That's kind of sweet, but also sad.
I know! Because when you look at it, you're like, oh, like, that is really sweet, especially because, like, it's a testament, and I can totally see where somebody's coming from, where they're like, oh, I'm not a pilot, but I can play a simulator as a pilot and, kind of give this as, like, a testimony, which was then shared, though, by the Ukrainian Armed Forces without any context. So then the video went viral, and although Snopes noted that the circulating video was miscaptioned, separately, comedian Sam Hyde's face was photoshopped onto an American pilot who was killed in a 2018 jet crash in the Ukraine as part of a long-running joke linked to Hyde's atrocities, which I honestly don't know too much about that. I didn't want to get into it because I felt like that would kind of take attention away.
That's like a sidebar.
Yeah, that's a sidebar that would take attention away from kind of what I'm here to talk about today. Mm-hmm. But basically, it's like a meme, kind of, this photoshopping of his face because people don't like him. And similar to the Ghost of Kyiv, on the 26th of February 2022, social media reports emerged of a Ukrainian army soldier dubbed the Ukrainian Reaper, who supposedly killed over 20 Russian soldiers in combat alone. So there was already stories, in this vein, popping up, probably as morale boosters or along the same line of being a hoax. It's really hard to say, right, without, like, having more knowledge. And there's a group called Task and Purpose who argued that while it was highly unlikely that there were even 6 air-to-air takedowns in total at this point in the war, given their rarity in the 21st century and the Ukraine's strong missile defense, the Ghost of Kyiv was real enough as the spirit of the Ukraines, as I mentioned earlier, and Tom Demerly of The Aviationist argued that the Ghost of Kyiv is an example of bizarre distortions amplified by the chaos of war. And that is my story for you.
I feel like I kind of agree with that end sentiment where, like, the war is so chaotic that, like, it's really easy for the misinformation to spread, and it was just a morale booster at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I do feel like the Ghost of Kyiv has kind of evolved into something more. It's just something more, like, and I do really like the take that people have given it and all that stuff because, rather than being, upset about something that was meant to be inspirational that ends up being fake, it's like, no, we can still take this as an inspiration. And I 100% agree with that. You should absolutely take, whatever you need as inspiration, especially during times of war, which are already complex and hard enough as it is.
I would agree. Like, I mean, I feel like when things are, like, bad like that, you kind of just have to, like, take any good thing as it comes and just kind of go with it.
Mm-hmm. And I really do feel for the person who made the Testament video to begin with, because I feel like that's such an innocent thing too, where somebody who's posting that's not thinking,
no,
that what they're making, which, it's a creation of expression, right? That their creation of expression is going to snowball into making a fictitious pilot that's going to, blow up online and all these things. It's just, it's strange to think about.
I think most people don't, when they make things, don't ever imagine it going viral like that, and it's always like the most random things that do.
Yeah, and you know what? When I was making my notes for this and, like, looking at the articles and stuff, you know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of one of our earlier episodes when we were talking about World War II. and I talked about the goblins. I think it was the goblins or the gremlins of World War II. And I was like, it's so interesting how...
The gremlins.
It was, yeah, the gremlins. It's so interesting how, because of the introduction of technology, that even pranks, hoaxes, fictitious stories, myths, legends, all of that has changed within the last, 100 years, right? Because before, it was like war posters going up, being like, beware of the gremlins, they're hijacking our planes, versus people being online comparing stats of downed planes and trying to locate where the Ghost of Kyiv is. It's a very interesting comparison for me of kind of, I guess, the sign of the times.
It's very different, but also weirdly very similar.
Yeah, right? I know. It's like I said, it's just it's something to think on. But was there any what did you think of my story today?
I think that the war should end, and yes. I'm just not a fan of war in general. But this ghost sounds like a badass.
Yeah, well, and I love that too. I get that, obviously I just spent the last hour talking about how it's a hoax and everything, but I do still love the idea of there just being a guy in an old-timey airplane just sniping people out of the sky for his country. I would be inspired by that. Are you kidding me?
Same.
Right? And wherever he is, in our minds, in our thoughts, in our prayers, this one's out to the Ghost of Kyiv.
Yes. And his major sleigh.
His major sleighs.
He's a majorly slaying.
Literally. At least 50 Russians or something. 40, I think it was? 20? Somewhere between
Crazy.
20 and 50 Russians. It is undecided. But yeah, if you liked today's episode, make sure to leave us a review on wherever you listen to our podcast. 5 stars is always appreciated, but we understand otherwise. We also have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com if you want to check us out on there. We have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com. We have our Patreon, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon. And we have our social media, which is Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. All at Wheel of Crime, if you want to check us out there. And lastly, as always, we still have that forum up for anybody who listens to our show and would like to share a story of their own. Say you're listening to one of our episodes and you're like, oh man, this totally reminds me of something in my life. You can write in and you may get featured on a listener story of ours. When we do them, we do try to do them for special occasions, holidays, and throughout the year, timeline-wise. So if that's of interest to you, write in and you may get shared on the show.
Yes, and that's it. That's all. We'll see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.